Once upon a time there lived a poor baker named Mahmud. He was a kind-hearted man whose wrinkled face told countless stories of patience, and his hands, though rough from kneading dough, were the gentlest whenever he touched his only daughter Safiya. Safiya was the light that illuminated his dark world. After the passing of his beloved wife, she possessed a face as radiant as moonlight and a cheerful spirit that brought joy to every corner of their humble home. Mahmud and his daughter lived in perfect harmony, sharing loaves of bread and happy laughter. However, fear began to creep into Mahmud's heart, a fear that death might claim him, unexpectedly leaving Safiya all there, alone in this harsh world. Driven by pure love and anxiety, he decided to marry a widow named Halima, but Halima was nothing like her name. She was miserly, cruel, and cunning. To get what she wanted, she masked her true nature with kindness and affection. In front of others, Halima had a daughter of Safiya's age named Baria. The moment Halima settled into the house, she dropped her mask of kindness. With resentful eyes, she watched how Mahmud looked at Safiya with pride and praised her beauty and good manners, while her own daughter, Aria, remained ignored and unnoticed. The fire of jealousy raged in Halima's chest, and she began plotting to remove Safiya from her path permanently so that the house and everything in it would belong solely to her daughter. One night, Halima sat in a dark corner of the kitchen scheming a way to get rid of Safiya forever. Driven by malicious thoughts, she pulled out a small vial hidden in the folds of her dress. It contained a bitter herbal extract that would cast anyone who drank it into a death-like sleep for hours. Smiling wickedly, she whispered to herself, "This is the perfect solution. Tomorrow morning I will be rid of her." The morning sun rose and Mahmud prepared to head to his bakery. As usual, he bid farewell to the sleeping Safiya with a gentle kiss on her forehead and left, his heart filled with peace, believing his daughter was safe in vanished from sight. An eerie silence settled over the house. Halima approached Safiya's bed and called out in a soft, deceptive voice, "Wake up, my daughter. I have prepared fresh milk with honey for you to strengthen your frail body." Safiya woke up with an innocent smile, thanked her stepmother, and drank the cup to the last drop. Within minutes, a heavy weight pressed down on her eyelids. The sounds of the world faded around her, and she collapsed into a deep unconsciousness. Once Halima made sure the sedative had taken full effect, she signaled her daughter Baria, saying, "Hurry up, bring the donkey." They wrapped Safiya's body in a piece of cloth and loaded her onto the donkey's back like a sack of flour. Halima set off, leading the donkey through narrow, hidden paths to avoid the neighbors' eyes until she ventured deep into the heart of a dense forest. There she reached an abandoned, isolated well where no human ever set foot. She carefully lowered Safiya from the donkey, pulled out a sturdy rope she had hidden under her clothes, and tied it tightly around Safiya's waist. With Baria's help, she began lowering Safiya slowly into the pitch-black darkness of the well. Holding the rope firmly, Halima whispered with deep-seated hatred, "This is your rightful place, far away from your father's eyes. May the depths of this well make everyone forget your very name." She kept lowering her until the rope went slack, signaling that Safiya's body had reached the bottom. At that moment, Halima released her grip, letting the rope fall into the well. She cast one last glance at the opening, took her donkey, and returned home, basking in the euphoria of victory, leaving an innocent soul suspended between life and death deep within the earth. At noon, Mahmud returned from his bakery smelling of fresh bread with a satisfied smile on his face. In his small bag he carried 2 pieces of candy, one for his daughter Safiya and one for his stepdaughter Baria. He entered the house, calling out in his usual booming voice, "Safiya, light of my eyes, come see what I brought you." But there was no sweet voice answering him. An eerie, unfamiliar silence gripped the house, and his heart sank. He rushed into Safiya's room. Her bed was neatly made and her belongings were in place, but she was nowhere to be found. Panic-stricken, he began searching the house, shouting, "Halima, "Where is Safiya?" Halima emerged from the kitchen feigning surprise. "What is wrong with you, old man? Have you lost your mind? Your daughter followed you this morning, didn't you see her?" Mahmoud froze. "What are you talking about?" Halima replied with calculated deception. "After you left this morning, Safiya was restless. She insisted on catching up with you to help at the bakery. I assume she was with you." The bag of candy dropped from Mahmoud's trembling hands, scattering sugar across the floor. He stepped back, striking his forehead in utter disbelief. "She followed me, but the bakery is so close. How could I not see her?" Mahmoud ran out like a madman, knocking on neighbors' doors one by one, asking desperately, "Have you seen my daughter? Did she pass by here?" Everyone shook their heads in denial. He dashed into the nearby forest, searching frantically among the trees and thorns, tearing his clothes. Without even realizing it, he screamed at the top of his lungs until his throat bled. "Safiya, answer me, my daughter, don't leave me alone." He returned home at sunset, broken-hearted and pale. He found Halima sitting in a dark corner, pretending to grieve. Mahmoud's heart whispered that there was a dark secret behind this disappearance, but he could never have imagined that such treachery lived under his own roof. From that fateful night, the light of the house was extinguished. Mahmoud spent his days wandering aimlessly, weeping as he inhaled the scent of his daughter's claim for a miracle to return what cruelty had stolen from him. Deep inside the abandoned well, Safiya began to regain consciousness. She slowly opened her eyes to find herself shrouded in absolute darkness. Trying to stand, she realized she was submerged up to her waist in freezing water. The walls of the well were smooth and covered in slippery moss, offering no foothold or way out. Safiya screamed with all her remaining strength, "Father, I am here. Help me." But her voice only echoed back to her as if the well were swallowing her breath. The first day passed. The cold gnawed at her bones, hunger tore through her stomach, and the terrifying darkness made her imagine monsters creeping out of the walls. By the second day, weakness took over, and she fell into a feverish delirium, tearfully whispering her father's name at dawn. On the third day, just as Safiya was losing all hope, heavy footsteps echoed above the well. They belonged to Jaber, a ruthless slave trader, whose heart was harder than the stone he walked upon passing by the well. He felt thirsty and lowered his wooden bucket, which was tied to a thick rope. As the bucket hit the water, Safiya felt its movement, gathering her final ounces of both strength. She grabbed the rope and cried out in a raspy, faint voice, "Save me, oh traveler, save a soul betrayed by monsters." Terrified, the trader pulled his hand back. Trembling, he shouted, "In the name of God, I seek refuge from evil. Are you a jinn or a human?" Safiya wept, clinging tightly to the rope. "Do not fear, I am human. I am the baker's daughter. I was thrown here out of sheer cruelty and injustice. Pull me out and God will reward you." The trader hesitated, but curiosity and greed overcame his fear. He slowly pulled the rope. As Safiya neared the top, he saw her face, though stained with mud. It radiated nobility and exquisite beauty. A wicked gleam ignited in his eyes. He felt no pity for her plight. Instead, he saw her as a priceless commodity. The moment Safiya breathed the fresh forest air, she fainted from sheer exhaustion. Ignoring her condition, the trader bound her delicate wrists with a rough rope, threw her over his donkey like a sack of grain, and covered her with old rags to hide her from view. He smiled greedily and muttered, "What a valuable catch. That face of yours will fetch me a fortune." He set off through rugged, hidden trails, moving far away from the baker's village. Safiya remained unconscious, unaware that she had just been transferred from the prison of the dark well to the bleak prison of slavery, and that the road back to her father had just grown unimaginably longer. The slave trader arrived in Al-Mansira, a bustling city humming with noise. In the center of its grand square, a slave market was underway. The trader pulled Safiya down from the donkey. She had regained consciousness, but her eyes were broken by the humiliation of the chains and the horror of her reality. He wiped her face with a damp cloth to reveal her stunning features, and began shouting at the top of his lungs, "Step right up, noble ladies and gentlemen, who will buy this beautiful maiden, a girl like a piece of the dawn, perfect for serving in palaces and elite councils who bids." More crowd gathered around, and merchants began inspecting her slender hands while Safiya trembled, like a bird drenched in winter rain, praying silently for an end to this nightmare. At that moment, the grand procession of the city's judge split through the crowded market. The judge was a venerable man with a snow-white beard and eyes that spoke of absolute justice and wisdom. He halted his procession when he caught sight of the girl. He wasn't captivated by her beauty as much as he was deeply pained by her broken spirit and the unmistakable nobility that shone through her tattered clothes. The judge dismounted his horse, approached the trader, and asked firmly, "How much for this girl, and what is her story?" The trader stammered, 100 gold dinars. "Your honor, I found her wandering, lost in the wilderness with no family to claim her." The judge paid the hefty price immediately, not out of a desire for ownership, but to rescue this innocent soul from the clutches of greed. He ordered his guards to take her to his mansion and provide her with the utmost comfort and care. In the judge's mansion, Safiya received food and fine clothing beyond her dreams, yet her heart remained bound to her father's bakery and the scent of his bread. She refused to speak to anyone, fulfilling her daily chores in total heavy silence. However, every morning at dawn, as the birds sang in the garden trees, Safiya would stand by her window, place her hand over her heart, and chant in a voice filled with profound sorrow, "Oh, you who threw me into the deep well after I lived in honor and safety, is this how kindness is repaid? O well of darkness, bear witness, and you stars of heaven, tell my father your daughter is in a stranger's house, being consumed by the agony of longing." The judge passed by her room every morning on his way to court, and he would pause to listen to this melancholic song which shook his very soul. He sensed a profound mystery behind her words and realized she was no mere lost servant, but the victim of a heinous betrayal. One quiet evening, the judge summoned Safiya to his council. He spoke to her with a gentle fatherly tone. "My daughter, you have lived in my house for weeks, and I have never heard you complain, yet your mourning song breaks my heart. Who are those who threw you into the well, and how did you come to be here? Tell me the truth, for I am the judge of this city, and injustice shall not sleep under my watch." Safiya burst into tears and poured her heart out, recounting everything from the death of her mother and the boundless love of her father to the malice of her stepmother Halima, the lima, the drugged cup of milk, the bottomless well, and the treachery of the slave trader. Anger flared in the judge's eyes. He slammed his hand on the table, declaring, "By God, I shall not rest until this wickedness recoils upon the heads of those who committed it." Losing no time, the judge issued an immediate decree to his captain of the guards, "Go at once and bring the baker Mahmud and his wife Halima. Inform them they are summoned to the chamber of justice in the city of Al-Mansura. Do not delay." By then Mahmud the baker had become a mere shadow of a man. His eyes were dim from crying, his back bent from grief. He spent his days wandering the streets, searching for any trace of his daughter, and his nights in prayer. Alima, on the other hand, lived in the house like a queen, believing her dark secret was buried forever. At the bottom of the well, the guards arrived and escorted everyone to the judge's palace. Mahmud entered the grand hall, trembling, clueless as to why the judge had summoned him, followed by Halima, who desperately tried to hide her mounting panic. At the front of the hall sat the judge. In all his majesty, next to him was a silk curtain, concealing someone behind it. The judge asked in a deep voice, "Baker, do you have a daughter who went missing?" Mahmud broke down in tears. "Yes, your honor, she is my soul that was lost, the light of my eyes that went out. They say she wandered into the forest after me, and I have found no trace of her since." The judge turned his piercing gaze to Halima. "And you, woman, what do you say?" She replied with flawless acting, "We wept tears of blood for her, my Lord, but the forest is treacherous and perhaps wild beasts devoured her. With a swift wave of the judge's hand, the curtain was drawn back. Safiya stepped out, dressed in pure garments, her face restored to its radiant splendor. Mahmud let out a deafening cry. Safiya, my daughter! He threw himself into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Halima collapsed to her knees, shrieking in absolute horror. Impossible! I threw you into the well with my own hands. With this sudden confession, Halima fell into her own trap. Before all the witnesses, Safiya stepped forward with dignity and said, Father, the forest was never treacherous. The one who lived in your house was the traitor. She put a sedative in my milk and cast me into a well, just to have the world to herself and her daughter. The judge struck his gavel firmly. Mahmud, this woman does not deserve to bear your name, and since she deemed your daughter's life worthless, her punishment shall be of the same nature as her crime. Mahmud divorced her on the spot, before the judge, banishing her from his life forever. The judge then ordered Halima and her daughter to be imprisoned in the darkest dungeons of the city, to spend the rest of their lives behind bars, just as she had intended Safiya to rot in the depths of the well.